to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. On this Monday, June the 16th, I'm your host, Michael Leva, joined by a very special guest, Lance Zierlein, NFL draft analyst for NFL.com and the NFL Network. You can follow him on Twitter, X, at Lance Zierlein. Lance, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm glad that I was able to have you on here for a few minutes to sort of get your thoughts on Miami's draft class from now a few months back. And let's start right at the top in round one. Pick 13, they took Kenneth Grant. And this one, I don't believe you had Grant as your top interior lineman here. Well, in that range after the ones at the top, like Mason Graham and stuff. I think you had Walter Nolan ahead of Grant. So what are your thoughts on Grant? And also, now with this news that Jonnu Smith is on the trade block, do you think if Miami would have maybe known that was the case, you think they would have took Tyler Warren at 13 instead of Grant or anybody?
No, I don't think so. They were so desperate, as you know, for a defensive lineman. I mean, they were missing pieces on their roster. They had to draft up front, and we saw that with 3 defensive tackles drafted in this draft. They had to. They didn't have it on the roster. I think that if you loved Warren, he would have been the pick, and that would have been that. But I think, that you never want to get into a draft where you are desperate at a position. And frankly, Miami was desperate at a position at defensive tackle. I know I plugged Kenneth Grant into the Dolphins in either mock 2 or mock 3, one of my mock drafts, just because. And you're right, I had Walter Nolan with a higher grade, but I had Grant going ahead of Nolan. I just heard too much negative on Nolan's immaturity, potential character, stuff like that. So. But Grant's got a lot of potential, but right now it's untapped. He's a big physical specimen with pretty good traits and good athleticism. But I think he's still a little ways away from becoming the player that he has a chance to become. But I think the Dolphins made this pick with the thought of who he's going to be in 3 years in mind. And that's what you want to do really, especially in the first round of drafts. You want to find out who is this guy going to be when he's at his very best. And so, every player you want to find traits because you think you can coach up certain elements that aren't there yet. And you want to look at elements that are more than likely going to improve with more time and more experience. So Kenneth Grant fits at 3-4 edge. He can play 3-4 nose if you need him to. He can play defensive end in a 3-4. If you go to a 4-3, he can play there. I thought that was one of the strengths of Kenneth Grant is that he can play in odd or even fronts at multiple positions. So, and I know people at Michigan that think it's just a matter of time before he blossoms into a dominant player. I thought the tape was a little uneven on him, but people at Michigan who coach him said, look, once he figures out how strong and powerful he is, once he figures out what a physical specimen he is, and that he has a chance to dominate the guys across from him, once that sets in, he'll be a completely different player. So I think this was made with the idea of, yes, you're desperate at the position, but 2, you obviously think he's got a high enough upside to be an impact player up front.
Yep. And with these first picks in rounds 1 and 2, they kind of replaced the guys they lost last offseason in Christian Wilkins and Robert Hunt. Because in round 2, they took Jonah Savanea, which I hope I say it right, out of Arizona, and they traded a 3rd and 4th to move up 11 spots to get him. First off, what are your thoughts on the trade, and what are your thoughts on him as the player?
Yeah, I didn't love it. I think he's kind of an average player. He's played tackle and guard. For me, he's just going to be a guard. I don't think he's athletic enough to handle the rush at offensive tackle. in the NFL. I think he's, I think he's okay. I think he's got a chance to become an average starter, but I think that's about his ceiling. I think average starter is his ceiling, and for me personally, just where I have him ranked, of course, we'll see what happens. My rankings are my own rankings, and I missed plenty, so it doesn't matter. But my own personal opinion is that this draft was deep in the middle of the draft, and I don't know. Once again, I felt like a kind of a little bit of a desperation spot taking guard there because it wasn't a very good guard draft. And so you end up giving up other picks. And, of course, you've loaded up on fifth-round picks, as we'll talk about in a second. But I thought you missed out on some good value picks there going for Jonah at that spot. I think you also maybe could have finessed it. I think he was going to go inside the first half of the second round, but I thought it was too early for him, and I just think his upside is very, very average. So can he become a starter in that offense? Yes, I think he can. Was it worth what they gave up? For me, I personally wouldn't have done it, just personally.
Yeah, there was a report out of New England that they were going to take him, I think, at 38, I believe they picked. So that's part of the reason why they wanted to get as high as they could to get him. They might have got word about that. Who knows if it's true or not, but I think that was part of the reason for the trade. They really liked him, and they wanted to get ahead of New England, who, from all the reporting we heard, was really interested in him. Again, though, for a team with so many holes, they traded out around 3, traded out around 4. They did pick up a round 3 pick next year with a trade they made, so that's good for next year, but it can help them so much this year. Then we move into round 5 where they had 3 picks. The first pick is one I think a lot of fans of the Dolphins are really – they probably like the most out of this draft, and that good value pick in Jordan Phillips out of Maryland for where they got him in round 5. I think a lot of the – I don't want to say smart fans, but I think people like that pick a lot for where they got him. What are your thoughts on Jordan Phillips?
My personal grade is 6th-round grade on him. For me, he had, 3 tackles for losses and no sacks during his career. There wasn't production. He's got 31.5-inch arms, which are very short arms. I just didn't see enough from him to warrant, there was some and people were probably excited because there was some early buzz. Some people.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And in early draft circles were talking, and I didn't see it on tape, and I called some teams that they didn't see it either. And obviously he lasted until the 5th round because I think, he doesn't have traits. 31.5-inch arms is a concern. He didn't have production, so that's strike 2 against him with no production. His 3-cone drill was terrible at 819, which is going to give you some change of direction stuff. The vertical and the broad jump from a hip standpoint were pretty decent. 31-inch vertical, that's not bad. 29 bench reps. He's got some strength. You can see some strength at the point of attack. So I'm not worried about that. Power is something he's got. He's explosive in his hips. He's twitchy in his upper body. I think what you're looking at, though, is I see some flashes on tape that I like. It just doesn't manifest itself in production. And so what you're probably looking at here is the Dolphins are saying, look, this has got a guy who's got a chance to be a nose of the future at a discounted rate. If not, 5th rounder is still a rotational defensive lineman. So, he's powerful at the point of attack. He's strong. He's got that stuff in the middle of a 3-4 defense that you want. He's not the biggest guy at 6'2 plus, about 312, 316 pounds, I think typically is about what he'll play at. You may want to get him up a little bit if his lean muscle mass will take on good weight. But I think what you're getting here in the 5th round, when you look at just, I don't see him as a steal like you say some of the fans do. However, I do see him as a good rotational nose, especially for a 3-4 defense. So I think what you're getting here is there are times he flashes more than the production would indicate, which a lot of teams look at that and say, we can take flashes and coach it up into production. It's just not on tape, and he's not going to help you at the rush much. But in the NFL level, I mean, not a lot of interior players going to help you in rush. He'll come off the field. Even if he starts, he'll come off the field in sub packages anyway. In passing packages and sure passing packages, if you will. So it's okay. It's all right. That's about, I thought he had a chance to go in that neighborhood. Wasn't bad. Wasn't bad. Jason Marshall, the next guy, 13th pick of the 5th round. Jason Marshall's a player who does have some traits, and he has some good size. He's strong as a press corner. You look at some of the corners the Dolphins have had, and he fits that mold of being a little stronger player, one who can create some issues off of press. I think the problem I have with him is he just doesn't have very good hands. I mean, he left a lot of interceptions on the field that he should have had, frankly. He ran okay, a shade under 4.5, showed good explosiveness in his jumps, had a pretty decent 10-yard split, which gives you an indication a lot of times of burst to close. You want to see a good 10-yard split. So, but the hands are not great. So he left some interceptions on the field, and you'd like to see him. I think from a skill standpoint, he's not going to be great as a man covered corner. I think what he's best at is maybe a little bit of cover 3, a little bit of, he can maybe run some bump and run. I think zone is a little more what's in line with where you want him, because mentally he'll fall asleep on some of the misdirection, the play action. So I think mentally he's got to get locked in and really become more aware. But he's got some good, physical qualities there. I think he can become more physical as a tackler. And if you get that, then you got a chance to improve from a run support standpoint, because he's got pretty decent size for an outside corner. So I think there's some improvement to be had there. I'm not sure if you don't have good hands, you don't really develop good hands. That's probably not going to be something from a takeaway standpoint. But from a pass breakup standpoint, the numbers are pretty good. And he's got the burst, and I think he's got the ability to make plays. So I think, he's best suited for a little more zone corner looks, because he's got the ability, I think, to make plays in the football. You just want him to turn some of those into interceptions. I think that's going to be the big challenge is, can you become, to get on the field, he's going to have to prove that he can, A, be a good tackler and be physical coming forward, especially in run support. And then B, he's got to become maybe a little bit more proficient at when he's in position, taking the ball away when it's that 50-50 opportunity.
Yeah, and he's going to have an opportunity in Miami, because their cornerback room really has nothing, especially once they trade Ramsey in the next few days or weeks, whenever that happens. So he's going to have an opportunity to see the field if he shows up in training camp, because he's competing with guys like Storm Duck, Cam Smith. I mean, there's really not much there. Yeah. Even if they sign a veteran who's still out there, he's still out there for a reason. So Marshall's going to have an opportunity. The third pick in round 5 was Dante Trader Jr. out of Maryland. Little undersized, not the fastest, but from all the research I've done and from some people I spoke to at Maryland, just like knows the game, has instincts, knows where he's supposed to be, but not the biggest, not the fastest at safety.
No, but that may also be because he plays in the nickel some, so he can line up over the slot some. They'll play him a little bit at single high. They'll play him in the robber position more down. So I think the thing he offers is versatility. You don't want to get as keyed up with him in just a single position. He's got the versatility to play in some different alignments, which I think might be what appealed to Miami, where they got him there later in the 5th round. He's a good athlete. Was a great, as you know, I'm sure it was a great lacrosse player.
Yeah,
really good one. He's got really good. Talking to a coach on the team, loves his football character. Said he's a good leader. Very high football character. I mentioned the scheme versatility. He's got a chance to help you some on special teams as well. He's got good instincts. So he can be an instinctive player in coverage, which I love, and anticipates throws. So he's playing with a quick mind, a sharp mind. He reads the quarterbacks for clues. There's a lot of things like there. He's not real fast in the straight line. I think it shows up on tape that he's got to, there's some limitations he will have there. And there are times where he'll guess some routes. Sometimes he gets a little too aggressive and is going to have to really diagnose the route rather than guessing at times. So I think he'll need to play with a little bit more discipline, and he needs to become more of a striker, a more physical player, which a lot of these guys do stepping up. I think he doesn't mind being around the action, but he's going to have to become kind of a hammer and go hit people. But in the 5th round, you want a guy who can step in and help on special teams. And then you want somebody that you hope has some growth potential so that he can eventually, come in as a 3rd safety. And then you want to eventually, you hope he works himself into a starting safety position, because then you got a less expensive option for at least 2, maybe sometimes 3 years when you have that going on. But there's some good ball skills. There's some good instincts to work with, things like that, some anticipation. So there are definitely some things to work with. I just think from a physical standpoint, there's some coverage limitations. So he's got to be in position. He's got to play with discipline, because he's not going to be just reactive and with great recovery speed, things like that. That's where he can get himself in trouble. But you love bringing a guy like this with the 2-sport athletic skills and traits. He's a great competitor and really is about football. So that's one of those guys you want to get in your locker room for sure.
Ollie Gordon in round 6. Now, in 2023, Ollie Gordon was the guy. People were talking about him for the Heisman. In 2024, he has an off-the-field incident, and Oklahoma State just wasn't very good at all in 2024. And if you look at the numbers, it sort of shows that on Ollie, not the fastest, but a guy who can break tackles. And I think he complements what Miami has well with the speed. We know Miami's got speed and Achane and Jalen Wright, who they took last year. Right. Ollie Gordon's like a nice complementary back there.
Yeah, he's a banger. He is, as you mentioned, the 23 tape is what you want to watch, not 24. Yep. He didn't really have any help up front from his offensive line. He's really – I look at the running scheme, and I think Jalen Wright is a perfect fit for that. Achane's a perfect fit. Ollie he's a real linear back. He's not really a hip bender. I think he's not going to give you cuts at sharp angles. So there's some of that one-cut stuff that I'm kind of curious how he fits in. You don't have to be the fastest guy, but you got to be decisive. He's decisive. He doesn't dance. You need to have courage between the tackles to be a one-cut back. He's got the courage. He'll trust his offensive line. He can become a battering ram once he gets going. When he gets downhill on you, if you block it up for him, he gets downhill. He can create some concussive collisions, for lack of a better phrase. He can really do some damage. I mean, he is a physical battering ram. So you love that because he can gain yards after contact, and he can also punish tacklers. But I think one of the things that is really beneficial is if you get 2nd and goal from a 2, more than Wright and more than Achane, Ollie Gordon, if he's on this team and scheduled to get some carries, he's a guy that you can give the ball to around the goal line, and he does work now. He's good at getting into the end zone, very, very physical, as I mentioned, getting into contact and then through contact. So he can play on 3rd downs too. He's got some pass protection potential. He can catch screen passes. You're not going to do a lot with him out of the backfield, but I can envision a scenario where Achane is out there in a slot, or you come out with a 2 running back set, and then Achane goes out in motion, and now you got a guy who can protect. Or, when you're out there, when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do anytime Achane's on the field, you have to figure out what you're going to do if he comes out of the backfield. Like, you have to have a game plan for that. Well, you're going to be lighter and faster to match up with Achane, and that could give a favorable box for Ollie Gordon to come in there and beat people up with a 2 running back set, which in essence is really a 3 wide receiver set if you take Achane out of the backfield and move him out there. So I think it's an interesting toy for Mike McDaniel to potentially game plan some people into tough situations. But more than that, it's just, as you mentioned, complementary. You got a physical back to go with the slasher in Jalen Wright with great top end speed. Achane is just an explosive athlete wherever he is on the field. And then this guy's the guy that's going to be a little brutal. He's the guy that gives you some brute force. And I like the fact that you have a different flavor of ice cream there in your running back room.
Yeah. Quinn Ewers, I've spoken to reporters from Texas. I've spoken to so many people on Quinn Ewers, and it's all over the map on Quinn Ewers. I think for Miami, big picture, if he can be a long-term number 2 quarterback, that makes it a quality pick in round 7.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot of injuries there. Some people don't like the style of play. I've heard everything on Quinn Ewers. What are your thoughts on Quinn Ewers round 7 to Miami?
Well, Quinn Ewers is a great value pick in the 7th round. I think Quinn Ewers has a chance to become a low-end starter, but not someone who's going to really, be a plus starter in the league. More than likely, what you mentioned, being a guy who can come in, maybe a 7 to 8 year player can come in and do a decent job as a backup and come in and start 3 games for you if you need him to start 3 games. He's got the 3-game starter potential. I think the problem with yours is he didn't get a lot better from 2 years ago to this year. I don't think he reads defenses all that well relative to what you're looking for a top 2-round quarterback, which is one of the reasons he's here at number 7. I mean, durability is a concern. I can run down the list of concerns. Yeah. That's why he's in the 7th round, but what we need to know is that he should have been picked way earlier in the 7th round. I think he is a good teammate. He's got a really natural way of throwing the football. He can throw it with some placement. He can throw it with he can feather it over the levels to be able to make some tough throws that some other quarterbacks can't. And I think he really needs a good offense. I think he needs a good scheme. I think there's things that he needs around him to be at his best. But fortunately, I think the Dolphins offer some of the scenarios that we're talking about. The durability, he'll just have to prove it. I know talking to his agent, he wants to come in and be a little heavier. He was heavier at Texas. Then he lost weight, wanted to be lighter. He was playing around 205, I think. And now I think he wants to be more 215, but the right kind of weight. I think he needs to add better lean mass, needs to get stronger. He's a quiet guy, but teammates like him. As I mentioned, he does have the ability, when he gets on a roll, man, he can make some really good throws. It's just the decision-making. He doesn't turn it over as much now, but the decision-making sometimes doesn't come as quickly as you want it to, and he didn't really read the field great. He played with an injury last year, so you kind of wonder, was he checking down unnecessarily on some throws, or is he just not seeing the field well? That's one of the questions I have. But I think Ewers in the 7th round is a great value pick, and I do think he's going to be – I think he'll be a quality NFL backup who can come in and maybe on the right offense make a little bit of noise when he does get into games and has to start or come in for an injured quarterback, which we know has been an issue
in Miami.
The backup quarterback situation has not been good in Miami. So
no, it hasn't.
Hopefully Quinn will improve that.
Yeah, and to say the least, there's always a need for quarterback depth in Miami. Last pick was Zeke Biggers, Georgia Tech. Just another big guy to put in the middle, long arms. I know he blocked a lot of kicks there at Tech as well, so he can help there on special teams. Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, this is a trades pick, 6'5.5". He's 320 pounds. He's got almost 35-inch arms. You mentioned blocking the kicks. You basically are just saying, look, let's go get a guy. He's not a bad athlete for his size either. So he's a pretty good athlete. Jumped 34.5 inches vertical leap at 321 pounds at the combine. Like, that's really good. That's high-end stuff. So you got somebody with some explosiveness in his lower body. He's got really, really long arms. I don't think he plays explosive. I think he plays too slow into the action, but he's got a big punch that he can throw out there. He's got the traits of an NFL defender, even though he doesn't really have the body type. The body type's a little bit strange, and he needs to play twitchier, getting off of blocks and into contact. And he's not going to be a pass rusher, but he has certain things that a lot of defensive linemen are not going to have in the NFL, period. I mean, explosive, twitchy hips, where we saw that with his vertical. That's why the combine can be important, because you see, okay, he's got this ability. What can we do with it? He's got rare length. I think he's got to work on continuing to get stronger and to take advantage of that length. But once again, you see another 3-4, defensive end. You got Jordan Phil. You got Kenneth Grant can be 1-3-4 end. You got Zeke Biggers can play 3-4 end, and you got Jordan Phillips as a nose. So I'm not saying that's going to be a starting defensive front at any time. I don't think that's the case. But I think it's interesting that you really plugged in talent at a position of need, and one of them had flashes in Phillips. One of them's got traits and really a high-end ceiling in Grant, but maybe a little bit lower floor. And then Biggers is just a total project, but he has some rare physical qualities that you take a gamble on in the 7th round.
Yeah, they went into this draft with Zach Sealer and literally nobody else on the defensive line that you would trust.
It was crazy. I've never seen a team that easy to pick apart with a mock draft. Like, I had other players I wanted to put with the Dolphins so badly. I don't think I ever gave him anything but a defensive lineman. I know I gave him Walter Nolan once. I gave him maybe I gave it to him twice. I don't know, but I just thought, how can I go in any direction but defensive tackle? They have
maybe corner was the only one because they didn't have any corners either. So a lot of people had the corner from Texas or the one from Michigan, who obviously fell to round 2 because no one quite knew about the injury there. But it was either corner or someone on the line. There was no other position to go with Miami because their holes were glaring there. They're still glaring at corner now in June, but in April, it's like those are the only 2 spots you could go.
Yeah. Looking at my last mock, I had Walter Nolan. There was some late love for Walter. I just decided to bet on the talent. Walter Nolan, so talented. But yeah, I think every single draft I had, Dolphins. The producer for I do a radio show in Houston. Yeah. Producers are huge Miami Dolphins fans, huge, and very smart about the Dolphins. And I asked him before mock 1, I said, Del, what do I need to be looking at for the Dolphins? He said, well, you better start on defensive tackle. They don't even have a starting line. Like they don't have a starting lineup.
One guy.
Right now. Yeah. And so once I heard that, I knew some of the other team needs, obviously. Corner was going to be a big one, offensive line. But for me, I just couldn't get past defensive tackle. Like, you had to take somebody there. Even if it felt a little early, you had to do it.
Yeah. So last question here as we wrap up. Just what are your thoughts on the Dolphins heading into this year? Again, this seems like a bit of a reset year. They're trying to transition because they were the oldest team in the league last year, ran off some of those guys who are older, like Calais Campbell's gone, Jordan Poyer's gone, Kendall Fuller's gone, and some others. And now they're sort of a lot of youth. The secondary's a mess. I don't know how it's just a mess, and it will be heading into the season. Just your thoughts overall on the Miami Dolphins.
Well, so, look, I love if you're healthy and everyone is doing what they're supposed to do, you still have just such a dynamic cast of wide receivers. I like Malik Washington. I like what he can bring to the table. Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill. I have nothing to say there. And Jalen Waddle, you have that going for you. I think I don't love what's going on at the tight end position with Johnny Smith now. So I think that is, if you had it to do all over again, it wasn't a very deep tight end draft. I don't know if you do something different. I think Pharaoh Brown is just really just a guy. I don't think he's going to do anything.
He's a blocker. He's not going to catch anything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's a blocker. And Julian Hill you've had for a little while. I liked him coming out as an undrafted free.
He's a little bit of the same thing as him, Brown. Just a blocker, not much in the passing game. That would be the thing. I don't know what they knew, but there were some tight ends, even around 5. I know Oronde Gatz in the second, who's obviously his father played here. They could have took him in round 5. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, he's a pass-catching tight end that I probably, now tight end is a little bit of a stretch. He's more like a big
wide. He's like an H-back. Yeah.
But there were some guys, and look, Jalen Conyers actually is a really talented player that you got as an undrafted free agent, but there's some real concerns with his work ethic and stuff like that. Like I had to ask around a lot on him because he has a game at Arizona State where he plays quarterback. They needed him to play quarterback, and he ran a lot of he took a lot of snaps at quarterback. He ran a lot of zone read, wildcat stuff. He threw the ball a little bit. Like, he is a really fun athlete to watch. They just, people I talked to in the background just said he's just not a hard worker in the weight room and stuff like that about him. But I'm telling you now, Jalen Conyers has talent. I'm really, really interested to see. He's one of those guys that I wouldn't quite write off. If you can get him right and get him buying in and, and working and treating this as a profession. Jalen Conyers, who was an undrafted out of Texas Tech via Arizona State, is somebody to keep a little bit of an eye on about, some of the things that we were talking about just now. Yeah. Conyers had more talent than some of the players who were drafted at that position. But just looking at Patrick Paul has got to really have a good year this year. James Daniels, I like the addition there. Savannah is going to have to prove that he belongs in that start. I don't think that job's just going to be given to him, to be honest with you. I think there's not a lot of room for error with the Dolphins right now on the defensive side of the ball or offensive side of the ball. And that secondary is just such a huge concern right now. Luckily, you have the Jets who, I don't know that Justin Fields is going to hurt you through the air, and I don't know that Drake May and the Patriots are ready to take a big step up. But it's just, I think for the Dolphins, it's going to have to turn into a lot of shootouts to win games.
Outscore everybody. They're going to have to outscore everyone this year.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Lance, thanks so much for a few moments of your time. To everyone, follow Lance Zierlein on Twitter, X, at Lance Zierlein. And, of course, check out his work at NFL.com and on the NFL Network. Lance, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Mike here from DolphinsTalk.com. Real quick, I just want to give a thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, just want to say thank you for all the support you provide us here at DolphinsTalk.com and have over the many years. We thank you, thank you, thank you. It's much appreciated. Without you, there would be no us. I know there are so many other podcast options out there these days, whether it's true crime, the NBA, Major League Baseball, news, politics, and of course, other Miami Dolphins podcasts as well. We really do appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your day, each and every day, to watch our stuff here at DolphinsTalk.com. Also, if you like this show and want more content from us, please be sure to sign up for Dolphins Talk Extra. Go to patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. We have a private message board where you can interact with only extra members and ourselves here, the staff at the website. We have extra podcasts about the Dolphins and also extra podcasts not about the Miami Dolphins. And we give away a ton of prizes. We have a ton of contests that are exclusive to Dolphins Talk Extra members. We give away autographs, memorabilia, jerseys, hats, all that fun stuff. So everyone, please be sure to go to patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. It's $3 a month. It's really cheap. You'll have a lot of fun. Trust me. But once again, thank you so much. Everyone, have a great day.